until, but some of you know me in here. Some of you are family members of mine, cousins, etc. Some of you, until very recently, were my neighbors and community members. Still love you guys. And, I'll come see you soonish. For others, since there's so many in here, that, are scattered around the world, I know some have seen some of my comments. I know there's so many posts that a lot gets shuffled around and, missed. Anyway, I feel like it's been weighing on me for a while, especially as the days keep marching on, and, I feel like summer has kind of been lost in the shuffle of things, sometimes even in groups like these, but, anyway, we are, and, by we, I mean myself and my children, were Summer's, immediate next door neighbors. Were the property that JD was trespassing on. We are the ones that called the police that day, and we are the ones that heard the scream, right? And just so there's no confusion and nobody can say that we are making things up. Let me see, I don't know if that'll clear up, but let me see here if it will do it with. Anyway, oh, there it goes. There it goes. Yep, see, Ben Hill. There you go. Anyway, that's the ID. That was our address until just a couple of days ago. And we're pretty grateful that it no longer is. As some of you know, considering some of the awesome people in this group that have sent encouraging messages and, well wishes and things that, I'm going to be honest with you, have kind of kept the darkness at bay. I appreciate it. It's helped. So, anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Also, before I go any further, because there was problems last time, I left comments, actually two issues, weeks ago, in an interview that, and look, I'm going to have a hard time using the initials you all use, just because of medical issues, and I'm used to calling people by name, and I'm going to try not to do that, but to make it easier on me, there's going to be some that and there's others I'm going to leave out, because it's not my place to out them or tell their parts of the story, or make it impossible for them to live their lives or to speak for them on what they experienced. and what they know. And so there's going to be things that you see that I do that with, if they allow these to be shared. The group admins, that is. But before I start, I would just like to say, one of the comments I left weeks ago after Candace and them had done an interview, and the screen was mentioned, we were kind of outed a little bit, and then immediately upon leaving a comment asking for my kids' privacy, people went and, I mean, within seconds, had shared pictures of them, even to my comment about, no, I don't, my children, because of our situation right now, are going through enough, and I'd rather, and even if we weren't, I would rather they not, that nobody share their information or images. And also, the other day, when things were mentioned, and I spoke up at all, people mentioned my speech and accused me of being intoxicated. That's not the case. I have cancers, and I had, as you can see, a surgery to try to remove one of them that had metastasized. We didn't get clear margins, things like that. Either way, as it stands, I was supposed to have begun radiation again, just, I think the 20th of last month. However, they've decided that they're saving that back for the other cancers and things, so we're just kind of watching this one kind of do its thing. But because of the situation and some other out of anybody's hands things, and then everything, I've been off thyroid meds for 5 or 6 months now, since well before Summer had, before she went missing. And it makes, when you're off of it this long, it makes things hard. My body doesn't function correctly. My hands kind of lock up joints, things like that. But it does affect my speech patterns. It makes my mouth heavy, along with where the nerves were cutting here. It hits those centers. So sometimes it does sound, and the more stressed I get or upset, and lately, I'll be honest with you, that's been a lot. And yesterday was not a good day, so today it's a little bit harder for me to enunciate clearly enough for others to understand me or not think I'm intoxicated. But I promise you I'm not. We can do a pickup any day. Anyway, so, yeah. And I have, obviously no thyroid. But the thyroid meds and not having those for so long is definitely affecting things. And so is our current situation, and, yeah. So the stress is real. You'll hear me go back and forth with speech. I'll try to make sure that I enunciate as clearly as possible. Anyway, I'm going to stop this one here a second so I can ensure that these will load and share and things, and aren't huge files. I just wanted to preface everything with that, so there was some clarification there. Sorry. And I guess here in a second I'll start somewhere, excuse me, a little while before Summer went missing. A couple weeks before, because I think things that far out are important. And my hopes for these are that maybe it helps keep attention on Summer in these groups and people looking for as they're out and their eyes open, and that she's not forgotten, because she matters. Okay, so, like I said a second ago, I'm going to try to start, excuse me, I'm going to try to start, several weeks prior to, Summer vanishing. On this particular property we were on, for years, not long before Summer went missing, we found out just days before the sale that it was for sale. A piece of it, not that actual property. But there was no signs that went up. There was no anything to let us know that it had been placed for sale or on any realty sites. Even though we were told later on that it had been, and that wasn't true. And we kind of know why. It was to keep trouble down, because, you know, the area, if you know it, you know it. And that particular road is notorious for certain things. And that road is named for a family member of, my children's father. Children's father's family. So it's named, yeah. Anyway, and so we knew there hadn't been signs because a lot of his family lives on it, further in than we did. So if you are, I'm getting a little lost here. Sorry. A little scattered. Everything for me is kind of a spider web. So if you are looking at Candace's property, our driveways are across the road from each other. And a little corner, like hers is here and ours is here, but we can see each other. And ours is worse than Candace has ever thought about, steeper and longer. That being said, the news pictures, they're a little deceiving in a way, because you can't really, the perspective's not, you know, living there is different. We're not as remote from one another as it makes it look. But yeah, we kind of are. And it's not going to make sense unless you live in the community, you know. And I mean, I have videos, pictures that could show you. But, anyway, contrary to popular belief, Candace and I at least, we can hear and see one another. From the top of our hill, even inside the house and inside of a cabin that was there, I could hear them, even in normal tones on their hill. And when you come into the road, our properties in particular, that property and Candace's property, are like, I don't know, almost like guards to the rest of the road route. They're taller, they're higher, everybody else is built kind of low and in the valley. So, our property, y'all, I'm stuck with it for right now. I'm sure people will take exception. Either way, it might happen with the hour, whatever, and the swap off and on with that. It's only been days. For us that we were there, so it's hard. Anyway, we can hear one another. We can hear the children playing in the fall when foliage. I mean, even when foliage is up, I can see some of hers. She can see some of mine. Winter, fall, we can see each other perfectly. Like, you know. But, other neighbors can't really see us. I can see down to others that I'm going to leave nameless, things like that. And I can hear them as well. The property, and like I said, it's hard for me because I know I'm speaking present, but it's like I said, it's been a whirlwind lately. So, the property we were on until a few days ago, it picks up sound a little differently than, just about everybody else in there. The way the hollow is shaped, the way the property is shaped, I can hear most of the hollow, and I can also hear the main road all the way out to a giant farm that's kind of near another point of interest. And the sounds are like it's right in your face in the yard at the top of the hill. Depends on. And anyway, so back to the property sale. We found out that it was the little piece, that JD and the whole thing there with the Ben Hill Hell happened. The day before, that particular piece, is at the very end in the ridge line, sort of it kind of goes between Candace's and the 125, sort of. It's attached to the 125. But, when we found it for sale, what had happened was people started coming up and asking if the house and the main property in this area, they were like, and arguing, and at first we thought it was like thieves during the day and people doing like the metal stuff and, who knew what, right? Didn't take it seriously. They would ask, is, this one for sale? We're like, no. And, so then had people arguing with us. It wasn't but a couple days before the actual sale happened. And then, there was strange people sitting at the very bottom at the bottom of the driveway for this property. Across the road, there's a spot, like a parking spot. And, it's a great place to watch, this property we were on, and straight up our driveway plus Candace's. And just sit there. But I could see it from. So anyway, I took exception to that. There was all kinds of people sitting there for like an hour or two, and as most of you know online, there was a DCS situation next door. And so, but it was so strange that, I think at that point I had messaged over and I was like, look, there are cars sitting here for hours, because I didn't know what they were doing. And, I don't know, always on this hyper alert, vigilant status, right? PTSD like crazy. So, for the most part, the house remained quiet, at least in my area of it, the cabin, because at the time I was going through cancer treatments, and the radiation had to be separated, so Anyway, and the cabin was a different angle than the house and other parts, so noises were different, things were different for me. Anyway, very particular and, all about not being bothered. So, any little noise would bring me out, even on a regular day. But it was making me, like, you know. And so, message next door, I was like, are these, like, people for you? What's happening? They were like, no. And I was like, well, I don't know what this is, but this has got to stop. So, I put tires in the way down there so people couldn't park there anymore, not long before, you know. And during the period that we thought it was for, you know, like, when we were finding out, but didn't know yet that it was for sale. So anyway, somebody happened to come by and have it pulled up on their phone, like a Remax or one of those, and we were like, what? And so we called the realty place, and we're like, and they had it wrongly listed as the actual address here, that, you know, on Ben Hill. Not the piece and parcel that was for sale that's attached to it. So we called the realty office. We're like, you know, what is happening? People are up here. You've got it wrongly listed all across the internet as. Hold on. And also looking at the Remax and, there were so many, especially out-of-state advertisements, because they're getting more money out of those in Hawkins right now, especially with people not even being able to view the properties in person. And, yeah, so what had been done, I mean, it was almost laughable. We knew immediately there was going to be problems. Because what had been done was when they came to take the photos, and those, if you live in a wooded area, you kind of know there's a sweet spot, especially for realty photos, that you can kind of make things blend. It goes, you know, between like fall and winter, or you take them in winter, like dead end, and then go into spring. It's, you know, puffery for real estate. It's kind of what they do. You expect some of this, but this was pretty blatant, and some of the craziest I'd ever seen. Some of the most misleading. And what they had done was, I think there was like a series of, on some sites it was like 34, others had 44 pictures. They had absolutely trespassed and come all the way up to like where the house, cabin, things like that were. Definitely not on the piece that was, you know, up for sale. And had made it look like, to anybody that didn't know the area or couldn't come look in person, and I don't know, they'd advertised it as rolling hills, and it definitely is not. Like, but they had made Candace's and this property, because, I mean, and the road in between us kind of blends, right? So you can't even tell it's there in the photos. But they had made it look like it was one big continuous looking thing. Couldn't even tell the road was there. And you, in some of the photos, can see Candace's basement door just perfectly. So, anyway, they were definitely trespassing. Most of the photos weren't even of the property that was up for sale. What that piece actually is like the crust of the bank. I think the biggest spot on it really to build is like 60, 70 feet. And it is over a cliff. I don't know how you would manage it, even with unrestricted, just because of, you know, waterways and ditches and the slope and the grade of the land, because even unrestricted doesn't mean, right? And then most of the actual physical property is like the whole 2 acres of it almost is like this, under where the barn sits for this property. You can't really access it. It's like the creek bed and straight up. I mean, you can't do anything with it. You couldn't build on it. You couldn't, even if you wanted to. It's basically just a cliff, and it goes straight down to the creek. It was definitely, and they sold it as is, where is. It was the whole thing. So, anyway, in those days that it was for sale, just a few, and I think we had finally, and they had advertised all kinds of crazy stuff that wasn't actually available there, like high-speed internet and a different power company. I mean, it was wild. So, anyway, definitely wasn't worth what it was going for. I mean, it was, somebody was getting robbed, that's the truth. But, so we knew when it sold, there was going to be issues, and, yeah. So for, even before the sale finalized, until it finalized, there were still people coming and going to look at it, people coming through there, and there had been a lot of that lately, especially in the past year. For other properties up for sale, people looking because of the unrestricted land in Hawkins itself. So, and there was many properties up for sale. So there was all kinds of out-of-state people. That's most of what came for this particular piece. There was cars coming and going. The road itself, the things that happened leading up to Summer's disappearance, were a little crazy for all of us, because had these been average weeks and days, any of us could have told you what ant peed in the road. But it was like a perfect storm was created in a place where perfect storms never happen. Because for the most part, this is a place you don't come into unless you're invited. This is not a place you stop in for a picnic. This is not a place that, this is a place if you don't know it, you don't stop in it, and you don't stop after dark, and you're not, this is not, yeah. So, anyway, with very little traffic, any other day we could have told you everybody that had been on that road, but it started with these property sales, and in particular with this property sale for the piece that JD eventually bought and did close on. So, even up until the time that he came, there was still people coming to look, hoping, I guess, that it would not close. And, yeah. Most people that came to look at that piece, laughed like it's, So, during those, weeks, I was given the go-ahead by, property owners, and, you're going to hear me mention Voldemort, here, in that way, because I'm having trouble using the name, because of our particular situation, and, there's just something, so, and when I say that, the person, I was with and their father. So, I was given the go-ahead to try to track down the property lines, which was a little strange considering the things we'd been through with the years and how, anyway. So I tracked down the property lines. Most of these people, if you know the community, are kin in some form or other. Most have property maps dating back to 1800s. In particular, this family were some of the first settlers to Rogersville and Hawkins and Beach Creek itself. So, the deed that should go with that piece that was for sale that JD bought happened to be the survey map itself that had been done in 77 that goes with the deed that the last one made it. Either way, it was in the closet. So, kind of knew where they're at, but I still measured off, had surveyors come out, whole nine. And even in the cancer shape, I went and got it done right, found mistakes, made sure everything was lined up, because there's a point of contention. And we knew that that in itself would present an issue. So, that whoever showed up, that would be a problem area for the family that owns that. I did my research, and I'll get to that in the next part. However, so at that point, after it's surveyed off, things are done, we just kind of wait for whoever's bought it to show up. And, so the next one, I will try to get to JD. Sorry, guys. The more I talk, the harder it gets, the more I have to clear, the more tired my voice and face gets, and like I said, yesterday was a pretty hard day, so stressed. Anyway, so, we think there might be problems because it takes JD a little longer than we thought to appear. However, during this period, I was pretty alert, because like I said, PTSD, hypervigilance, had it all, still do. However, not to the same degree. I have realized now that those were things, that were extremely magnified, for me, and I thought for other reasons until our escape, not long ago. So, anyway, so, every noise, everything was kind of bringing me out, to look at, to make sure of, vehicles, cars, checking on things, survey lines, for weeks, waiting on JD, who I didn't know at the time because obviously had no name, no way of getting, knowing anything until the transfer happened, or until somebody showed up. So, like I said, there was still lots of traffic coming and going, people hoping it hadn't, closed, or that it wouldn't, or there would be pullouts, or, that sort of thing. My PTSD and hypervigilance had been pushed into overdrive. And so I was paying more attention to the traffic and things, and, honestly, before we get to JD, I think there's something, because I've seen it mentioned in the groups before, but it doesn't seem to be widespread, and I don't know, or I'm not sure why it's not mentioned more, but for several weeks leading up to, and even after summer had vanished, there were two crews working on a road, tree and mow crew and that sort of thing, But for a couple of weeks, they had kind of solely been on Candace and Donnie's property, like just grinding it down, like I have never, ever seen before in my life. Like trees, tree stands, buildings, fences, fence posts, I mean, down to the nub. It was pretty wild. And I didn't realize how bad it was until the day we were searching for Summer. And how, I mean, it was, I'd never seen anything ground down like that. So it was like, what? In the, But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But they had spent quite a while just working on Candace and Donnie's. And being over there on that piece. Like, yeah. And so they were in there for several weeks leading up to Summer's disappearance. And it wasn't just like a couple guys. This was dozens and dozens and dozens. It was personal vehicles, it was work equipment, it was chainsaws all day. They would cut out and the noise would stop around 3 p.m. every day. But it had all of our dogs kind of worn out, and just overwhelmed between the traffic for the property sale and strange people and, then all this massive amount of heavy equipment noise. It had just, everybody's dogs were tired of it. However, Candace's puppies and dogs are partially part of, I don't know, my dog is partly their dad. But these dogs do bark like we've all said. I mean, they know us. They see us. I can go to the lawn driveway and they would be like, la 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 la. They could hear me come out of the cabin just a couple of feet and light up. Like, and they know us, but they still, I mean, they have a problem with the barking. And then there's one, I had a particular name for her because, Lord, his particular bark. But anyway, and we were around these dogs and they would still light up. They knew our noises and it was still a constant. And they were less wore out than our dogs, so they were still barking, they were still kind of themselves. Either way, so for several weeks these crews were in there. There were things I found, a little odd. I mean, I've worked construction, I've worked all kinds of jobs, and as a female, you kind of know how life is, right? No biggie, you know how it is. We all kind of just. But there were several points where I was asked to stop and talk to these guys on ways to appointments and things and let them know that if they had to cut timber when they got to this piece, that it was to be left laying, not to be cut, not to be taken, because there was already issues at that point with that stuff happening, and people were taking exception, especially with the price of lumber. And, so, I had some things happen there to where, like, I had one of, the radiation scans, and I was just wearing, like, a top like this, and some stretch leggings, and, like, a sports bra. That way I didn't have to be in, like, a gown, and more uncomfortable, because for that particular scan, you were literally tied together like a turkey. It's not comfortable. So I was going out, I happened to catch, what looked like supervisors and things, early in the morning. Told them that, but I had a couple pins accidentally dropped several times in a row into a spot to where I have to lean over and get them. And the entire car was surrounded in ways that made me super uncomfortable, even though I'm not really the type to be uncomfortable around. So, that was happening for several weeks, like I said, on mostly and solely just Candace and Donnie's property. I mean, we were all like, man, it is taking forever over there. But they literally did some of the most, the clear cut over there and straight to the main road is one of the most, I don't know, things I've ever seen. So, then comes, and at this point, the foliage, I want you to keep in mind, is not as thick as what everybody saw on TV yet, and it really wasn't like that until just a day or two even before summer vanished. It wasn't, I mean, I could still walk through the woods and see, and I could come out on the bank and visualize and see all the lines. I could still see Candace's house. And as the days after JD shows up and then summer vanishes and the searches and it's starting, it had a couple rains there and everything right before all that, so it just, you know, it immediately looked like it had been like that. And so noise carried differently, things changed, it did make the searches harder, you know, I mean, it was out of control within days of summer vanishing. So it went from being able to step between trees and stuff just fine and being able to visually lay eyes on something to no longer having a line of sight because of how much the growth had exploded within just a very short time frame. So I'll get to JD. Okay, so the day before summer vanished, right? It was a pretty normal day. I was pretty tired, didn't feel good that day. I do recall, what had happened was Voldemort had, I believe, gotten off early or something, or there was an appointment. I don't really, I'd have to look back at messages, honestly. So I took a nap, and then woke up mid-evening, and I had to go out to get things, obviously, for the day, like dinner and, you know, normal stuff, right? Normal routine day for most people other than probably the cancer nap. And, you know, we were still hearing sawing noises, but our dogs weren't barking. And like I said, ours were worn out. However, Candace and them still did, you know, bark and things. But hey, no, never mind. You know, we get in Voldemort's truck, start down the hill, and my car sat at the bottom of the driveway for the most part. Anyway, mind you, before JD had ever shown up, when the property lines were run, the survey lines, that type of thing, and markers put on the iron property stakes. That way, whoever bought it, you get the visual idea, right? There had also been posted signs, no trespassing, that sort of thing. That way, you know, they'd have a visual idea where they needed to walk and where they needed to. You obviously hear my small herd of elephants here. It's a little loud where we're temporarily staying. Yeah, but teenagers, right? and preteens. Well, an adult and a preteen. But anyway, so we start down the driveway, and I think I'm seeing things. I really think I see the rear end of a vehicle parked on one side of the driveway, and I'm like, no, I'm just not going to say anything to Voldemort because I think I'm seeing things. But then Voldemort realizes he sees it too, and things are getting ready to go real sideways. So we get to that spot in the driveway, which is, basically at the bottom of it, and the truck is barely stopped, and this part right here is why I can guarantee you that JD calls it Ben Hill hell, and at this point, it's kind of my favorite term for it as well. Can't disagree with him. So anyway, and probably for the same reason. So anyway, Voldemort jumps out of the truck and loses it on JD. Even I didn't think, and it was rare for that particular, it was on other people, but this time it was, and I was like even surprised myself, and thought I wasn't really going to calm him down at all, but I sent Voldemort eventually, because what JD had done was there are two particular trespassing signs, as you can see in some of his photos. Kind of made it a challenge because he chose those. Most people are going to go to the left or the right if no trespassing signs, right? JD didn't do that. JD cut through my lights, my decorative lights. He had a chainsaw and apparently been cutting trees down and all kinds of things to park that vehicle directly in between two no trespassing signs, like a challenge. It was kind of mind-blowing, honestly. And also probably the wrong neck of the woods to do that in. That road in particular does have a reputation. Probably the worst inside of the community, other than one other one. For bad things. So, anyway, I get Voldemort calmed down. I send him back up the hill to get the giant survey map that had been framed because it's so old. That way nobody could, wouldn't break in things. Anyway, and the calls and the papers and everything, from the courthouse and stuff that show the calls and all that. And let me make it clear, the survey map was made by that family that property piece JD bought belonged to. So it wasn't the survey map for this piece. It actually went with and was paid for by that family in 76, and right before the deed sign, which is like 77. And I have pictures of it and things, and the up-close spot that's in question and that type of thing. But anyway, so I'd see him up in case, because that was my plan, right? That's what I thought the family wanted me to do, was here's the paperwork, here are the things, kind of let me show you around, here where issues are going to be, like, here's your, anyway, Voldemort kind of ruined that with the attitude, and I don't think it would have helped anyway, just because of, and I'm sure he might be watching it here, but just because of JD's own behaviors. Oh boy, it was a day, let me tell you. So, when Voldemort came back down with the things, JD wouldn't even really look at them, was having none of it. Also, it started on me that JD wasn't real interested in, because he could absolutely visualize where the markers were and the lines had been run, but didn't seem real interested in facing that, and he handed us at one point just a GIS map. And if you know anything about properties, it even says on, like usually where those come from, are the county websites and things, they are not to be in place of surveys. There's a reason for that, because GIS data is just tax data. It's what you're taxed on, it's not what the actual parcel is. It does not make up for a survey. Boy, it does not. And, whoever sold it to him, that's what they gave him, was just a blown up picture of GIS data. Which is some of what I've seen, and mostly what I've seen in these groups being shared, are you all sharing GIS data. It is not the same as parcel and survey maps. Not even remotely close. And so he handed that to us, and it was kind of laughable, but I was like, look, and I had to kind of force him to be like, look, will you take pictures of this? That way, in the actual survey map, and, I'm sorry, you've been kind of misled, but don't take it out on us. And by this point, things had, and he, Voldemort goes up to his uncle's, hold on, and Voldemort realizes at this point, when he comes back down the road after I've been left with JD alone for a few minutes, that his uncle had already talked to JD and found him there on the property not too long before us, cutting and doing whatever, and had told him he was on the wrong piece and asked him to move, and I guess they all had words. And his uncle left before it upset him, that type of thing, so we had come down not long after and found JD there ourselves. So then it set Voldemort off again, and he leaves back and forth a few times, calling his mom, who's one of the ones on the deed with the uncle, or whatever, I don't know, property, I don't know. So anyway, JD is mostly arguing the whole time about how he's not moving, this or whatever. I think at one point he introduces the dog, which is a big thing with him. I did notice that when Voldemort was away, JD would treat me entirely differently. There was something that just kind of slid over. It was very strange. And he would talk to me entirely differently than he would with Voldemort there. And, there was once I was just trying to have a conversation with him. I'm like, look, just trying to get him to be calm enough to hear me out. That it kind of struck me a little wrong. There was one point there that I did warn him about our children, and in particular in this community, the houses have mostly been built kind of eons ago. People I know online had asked questions about Candace Nims, and it was much larger till right before this, and they torn off and were going to rebuild, so that's why it's the size it was. Man, they were just rebuilding an old piece that had been there, and we're getting there. Anyway, so the way it all sits in properties and houses, especially with the 3 or 4 that are right there, and we can kind of see each other. The bedrooms and things face certain ways, that way especially the children's aren't, and there's no adult bedroom space, so, but there's one particular spot that JD's piece would have come up to meet right next to where, like my daughter's bedroom sort of was. And I did warn JD that if I caught him because I'm not gonna lie, he struck my stomach a little funny enough for me to tell him that if I caught him in that spot after dusk doing anything other than mowing, I wasn't gonna ask twice. And I wonder now, all kinds of things, I don't know. But, we did at one point, and after Summer went, we knew he was lying to us about certain things. He didn't want to give us his name. The only way we found out his name was at the very end, and after the police were there. There was definitely a mask wearing situation going on with that fella. Because we were backing out in my car, and I thought he was moving by this point, because he couldn't find another place to park. He asked if he could park across the street, and this and the other, and we were like, nope. And, there was some weird things, like, I thought it was his health, or he was having, like, breathing problems, but I realized several times that he was sitting on the back of his, blue blazer thing, kind of squatted on it, like, kind of bent over, and I thought he was having, like, health or breathing, or just where he was older problems, not in shape problems. But then it took a couple times for me to realize that he was kind of throwing a tantrum. It was like a, and I was like, oh dear. And in between, like, Voldemort coming and going, JD, before his point had, like, he would talk to me. Well, he would ask something of me, whatever he wanted to know, whatever he wanted answered, in a pretty direct, rude manner. Like, I was supposed to answer like that for him, like, on command. And I was trying to stay pretty quiet, but I would answer whatever it was. But when I asked something of him, he wouldn't respond, or it was very strange, like some sort of biblical marriage. The guy definitely has some sort of problem with females. I mean, it's just how I feel about it personally. Definitely some issues there. But after all this transpired, found out he had lied about his age, that sort of thing. When we were backing out, at one point we thought he was backing out too, in between the no trespassing and gonna do whatever, And instead, because he's sitting on the back of the thing, we think he was taking a rest for a second. That was not the case, and I was like, whoa, Voldemort, stop the car for just a second. And I kind of was in the passenger seat, and the window was rolled down on the driver's, and I was like, are you gonna move? And he was like, no, I'm not, because this is mine, and I just, whatever, I was like, look, no, and Voldemort, so I was like, you know what, go call the cops, because, like they've said in the media and things, cell phone signal, that sort of thing down there, right? So Voldemort leaves me there again. I'm keeping an eye on JD, and he goes to call the cops. At this point, JD realizes, it was a swap really quick. And he was like, well, could I do this? And could I park there all of a sudden? And could I? And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, he wanted nothing to do with me. So then he starts packing up what he does have unpacked, which is like a camping grill, charcoal, the dog, cheap dog food. But the whole back of this thing's filled with stuff. We've got pictures that show what all he had in the vehicle that day. And him as well. But his plan was to camp there and squat until, I guess, he had a picture of like one of the cabins, almost like I had for the cancer treatment, but really small. And so this itty-bitty folder was basically just a picture of GIS data, and then one of the prefab cabin things. Sheds, whatever. But at that time, he was just planning on, like, tent and little grill, dog. I don't know. Starting fires and I don't know. It was weird. So, he packs all this back up with his cans of gas and whatnot, right? And, at least some of it. So then, one of the property owners comes, Voldemort's person, and, we have all the paperwork and things. The cops eventually show up. By this point, JD seems like and he tells us before the cop gets there, we don't have to worry about it. Won't have a neighbor, etc., etc., because Voldemort had offered to buy it and this and the other from him by this point several times too. And at one point, JD tries to hand the cop the GIS data too, and even the cop was like, and there's the giant survey map that isn't it. And the cop basically tells him that these people have owned the property for X amount of, like, 200 years. Pretty sure they know where the property lines are, or whatever. Which, anyway, so JD's not real interested in giving his name. I don't think anybody ever really even asks for it. Then all of a sudden because he told us, like, he had offered the information. He was some sort of vet in, I think, Germany at the time, which didn't really add up with the age he gave us. But he never says that to the cop or anything, and that's usually kind of the first thing. I mean, it's kind of a thing, right? It's usually the first thing that I'm a vet, right? It's one of those things we all know. But I noticed he never mentioned that. That was a little strange. Cop gets there. JD kind of wanders off to himself mostly and really starts packing everything the rest of the way up. Then it seems like, I don't know, he's going to find somewhere else, whatever. Then all of a sudden his personality becomes kind of sweet as pie, and he mentions, something about the wife, and I heard it like the wife stabbed me or wanted to, I don't know. It was a little bizarre. I was standing a little ways off at that point talking to the pseudo mother-in-law person. And, so at this point, JD had even mentioned for him he was selling, etc. But then Voldemort asks him, he's like, hey bud, can I get the number or whatever before you take off? And the mask sort of slips. JD's back's turned at that point to everybody. And JD just kind of screams out in this angry tone, why do you need that? Even the cop stopped and was like, you just told him you were selling. I mean, like, how's he supposed to get in contact with you? Voldemort sort of says the same thing at the same time. Then that's how JD's name's sort of learned. The first, anyway. The rest was in a file and accidentally caught by eyesight. The numbers given and exchanged. He makes a big deal of not having anywhere to go. Asks for hotel recommendations that would take a dog. We all tell him, including the officer. And then at one point, he had heard, and this was, sorry, it's a little scattered, but at one point there, right before, somewhere between him and the GIS data and the survey thing, it seemed like I was like, well, civil court. And when JD heard that, he got a little excited, like, oh, well, so I can squat here and tell, basically. But then I was like, but he got through lights and things to get in there, and the officer was like, oh no, you can't do it. I'm going to need you to come on back out of there. So at this point, JD knew he had to leave, because, you know, parking somewhere's one thing, cutting through stuff to get to it is another. So, anyway, hold on. By the end, JD's pretty acquiescing, asking about hotel recommendations, sweet as pie again. Pseudo mother-in-law backs out to kind of let him out, and the officer's still sitting there with us, and JD almost rips off the entire exhaust system trying to get out of there and out of the... There are two driveways. Where JD was parked is considered the old driveway for this property. It's the original driveway, and it kind of curves and goes up. But there's also a straight driveway, and it is newer, and worse. This is, as most people tell you, even four-wheel drives have a problem getting up this thing. So, when he backs out of the curvy one and the straight one, the concrete for the roadway comes down, and, I mean, he's in such a hurry, he almost rips off the exhaust, but he leaves. But JD struck us all so wrong that later that night, we went looking at all the hotels we had recommended, all the way out to Bayleton and Greenville, seeing if we could see his vehicle, to make sure he was where he was supposed to be, and then he wasn't at any of those places. So, as we're coming back through Four Beach Creek and back to this property, we check every hollow and every place we know of people to be able to park and squat and do whatever. He's nowhere. Which, trust me, is a few places down through there. Never could find him. So we just let it go. We go on back. And that's kind of the topic. And what's on our minds for at least a few hours. Until... Right. And, that's the big topic of discussion for everybody in Beach Creek and what's happening with that. And, I honestly think I had done a video or two that day, that evening. I don't recall if they're open or not, but if they are, they're there, and they're just hours before Summer goes missing. So anyway, that was at least most of the interaction with JD. The guy was a little off. The only vehicle I saw parked there that day was the blue Trailblazer, older. The next day, as y'all have seen and heard, things started changing. Which we first took to be rumor, and I still, you know, there are questions about things, even for we who were up close and personal with these situations and had visual on all of this for the duration. But all of these things, like I said, definitely came together to create this perfect storm that even 2.5 weeks before, well, because by this point, I just want to let you know, the tree cutters were there. JD was having property, you know, people still showing up. That even happened quite a bit even after JD left. because after that, we've not seen JD again. At least I've not. And I mean, that was just like 13 days ago that I was there. So, I do know that we spoke to JD. Voldemort did. The kids have, I believe that, and the lawyer he contacted, the conversation with that between Voldemort and JD's lawyer here, videotaped. So I don't know. I know that on JD's Facebook, he said he was here the next day. Something about biscuits and gravy or beer. And a dog. And that was it, kind of. But I think the lawyer wasn't talked to until like 2 days after Summer went missing, is the impression the lawyer gave on this video. So I'm not really sure how long JD was in town after the Ben Hill incident. I mean, you know, David Sherrills, and most of me agrees. I don't think he's pretty low on my list. That's all I'm saying. I think he has his own separate issues. I think he's a little off. Definitely has maybe problems with women of some variety. Some anger issues of his own. I'm not real sure. Could have just been a situation. Could have been all kinds of things. But me personally, he's low on my list. So, I don't know. I'm not a cop. I'm not a detective. I'm not the feds. They know what they know, and I just experienced what I experienced. So those are two entirely different things. It's their job to put these pieces together. Anyway, yeah. But JD did make it seem like, I don't know, this, when he first came in there, it was this over-exaggeration. He did lie about his age, made himself older than he actually was, by quite a bit. Kept mentioning how he was having problems moving and falling, but then I didn't really see that. I saw an exaggeration of that at certain points, so it was a little weird for me. I don't know. Whole thing struck me as weird. But JD had been in there for obviously quite a while, stalling, doing whatever. Did tell us that at one point he had actually, because I think Voldemort had asked him if he'd even walk the property at first. He was like, no, and he was like, well, yeah, I came with a friend. But then it coincided with another name that had just shown up like a day or two before in conjunction with the sale online. And I was like, it struck me as like, did he just use that second person's name and stuck out as a realtor? Like, he lied about that too. Like, so who knows if he actually had walked the property? Because I'll tell you, there was a lot of days there, and I don't know how they would get past the dogs things, but they did. I still have no idea. They took pictures of our property without our dogs in them, but they did. They must carry I don't know. But the point is, I highly doubt it. Honestly, I think it was just another lie. But that's just my opinion. It was a very strange thing. But still, for me, he's probably one of the lowest on my list. That's how I feel about it. And he's not wrong, and I really do enjoy his Ben Hill term. I've now adopted it. I'm using it too. So, thanks, JD. Anyway, I will be back in just a minute. Okay, so I'm back. I'm gonna have to hold this thing instead of leaving it stationary. because it definitely needs to charge. So, oh, there was something just a second ago I knew I had accidentally left out, and I don't really recall what that was now. I know that it was a very strange, perfect storm that created all of this, to where Summer was even able to go missing. And, like I had said, any other time, and we would have, I don't know how anybody would have ever pulled this off, and I still, for the life of me, do not. Because even just minutes before she vanished, if anybody had asked me if I thought one of our children could be taken from in there, I would have laughed. And trust me, as a mother and as the mother of the only other girl in that hollow and the only other, I had the only other children in there, in the particular road. But the only other one with a daughter. And obviously, you know, like JD had struck me wrong enough to warn him about my own and about all of the neighborhood children and grandchildren and things in the surrounding. But I keep an eye on mine even in town, because, you know, around here it was pretty mild, and now we've got like the big rings coming in and stuff this place is not used to, so it's working well here. So they're hitting smaller towns. We've had quite a few things happen in the past couple of years, including at the park that Candace happened to be at that day. There have been quite a few incidents there to where most of us had stopped going, or taking our children to there's a playground there that it's beautiful, and it's also set up for special needs children. It's one of the better ones around here, but there have been so many pervs at it and doing crazy things that a lot of us locally and in the surrounding area had stopped going. I think there were several, you know, news pieces, but I know that there was Facebook posts about it a lot, and pictures of the men they caught, you know, so, either way, and at our local Walmarts, things like that, there have been a lot of incidents in the past couple of years picking up something this place in particular not been used to, sort of like the money scams and things, and like the fake legs and all that this place in particular wasn't used to. Bigger city stuff, they are, but, you know, it's moving here because obviously easy marks, right? So, either way, pretty vigilant about her, and when you see me look over that way, she's over there. So, anyway, and she has her headphones in, because I've asked, because this particular topic it's hard for her, it's hard for all of us, and anyway, so JD had happened. He had hit my gut enough to, you know, warrant me saying something about my daughter and that particular spot, and other things, but like I said, he's pretty low on my list, and honestly, I kind of owe the guy an apology. I was wondering why it was a little strange that for once out of 26 years I was allowed to be the spokesman for this particular Voldemort pack. And when even Voldemort had stood up and been like, oh, Mom let her speak because she's done my research, this, the other. And the whole time I've been under the impression that the spike in question on the original driveway, that the reason it was where it was, even on the 77 map, was because of the way the watershed works from the very top of the hill where the main house is. And they had changed it and made it look like that spike was in the main road, but that it actually wasn't, like, say the spike would have been in, like, just general grass area, okay? Say in, like, 1800 or whatever. But then the watershed from the top of the hill, the way it transferred over the years and trickled down, would have eaten it and then made it become one and look like it was actually in the original roadway. And I'd asked specifically about this, thought I'd made sure of that, and I was kind of, I don't know, assumptions, right? So when JD got there, I noticed it was a little strange that Suda, and I didn't notice until after all this went down, that it was asked of Suda mother-in-law to kind of step back and let me speak. And I was waiting for her to, so I didn't really honestly say much, because they're pretty particular about things. And so I didn't really say much anyway, and it never really came up with, I did tell JD that was the one thing the family would fight over, and that was the thing. That was the only point, and that's exactly where JD had parked, was the entrance in between those two no trespassing signs to the original and main driveway. Then it was several days into the summer thing, before I was kind of looked at and told, nope, that's where it's always been. That is actually in the road. So, what I told JD wasn't, I don't know, I was manipulated and sort of omitted to, and I guess that way everybody else could say they weren't. And so then I checked it out with other family members, people who had passed, who were close to the original property owner prior to, and that was most certainly the case. They said the reason the second driveway was actually built was because in that survey map 77 was touching, they were afraid that would become the right-of-way, and so they built the second driveway that's used now to ensure that could not happen. So, there you go. Me and Jay both were just, and I think a lot of it was, it falls into the, I think a lot of it falls into, what was happening to us for years there. Weren't really allowed to build on or do anything or this and the other. I did manage to eventually get agreement to build on a bathroom. Nobody would let a septic be put in. And I think that the reason it was such an issue about the property for everybody was so contamination and things weren't found, and especially the giant trash pile and that sort of thing, and the well and the creek being so close and whatever, because that would bring trouble. And I think that, for years I've been like, hey, this needs to be taken care of, blah, 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 but it was part of what we had to endure there, and it was part of the control there, and I warned people that would eventually come down the pipeline. Didn't matter until. And then I was used and manipulated to, in a way to where everybody could say, So, anyway. But I think I owe JD an apology. However, I also think, whatever. Anyway, so that was the topic until summer vanished. I mean, some of the last messages, with I and others, just in those last minutes before and the last hours before were about the property drama and about all these things. And it seems so silly now in comparison that that's what everybody was concerned. Like, however, JD being there the day prior and wondering if he was going to come back and it was going to be super weird, or, cops showing up or whatever, kept me on a hyper alert. I mean, like, super hyper alert. Like I was anyway, like I said, but after him being there and the weirdness, it kept me on. But somehow I still missed what happened next. And I still can't tell you how. And, I wish every day I could tell you how I missed what happened next. I wish every day I could just tell me how I missed what happened next. So, anyway, I'm gonna end this one here, and I'll be back. The next day, the day Summer went missing, pretty normal day. Kind of goofing off maybe at JD's expense a little, because I still had no clue what I'd been used for. So I thought all kinds of things. Anyway, and that was the high drama, right? And then we were just like normal, for the kids and I. Most days, health-wise, especially at that point, were not good for me. I'd been off the thyroid meds. I'd had a really hard time running those survey lines and doing what I had to do to get all that done anyway, with no help other than my oldest. Sorry. I have a cramp. Whew. And, so, the kids and I were in the cabin. The doors open, the windows open, no TV or anything going. For the most part, the cabin itself was pretty empty. I had a bed in there, fish tank, that type of thing, but it was actually a pretty good feeling day, so air conditioning wasn't on, anything like that. Felt pretty nice. And at the time, it hadn't been, and it still wasn't last I knew, just a few days ago, insulated or drywall up or anything. So, you could basically, and it was a different angle than the house, so sounds were a little different to it than, say, the house was. And it was a little closer to Candace's than the house. So, I'm at the head of the bed, safe like you were up towards your headboard, and in the middle I was kind of in that area of the bed. My oldest was to my left, but around where, like, if you were sitting Indian style at your headboard, he was kind of to my left and down a little past where knees Indian style would be. And my daughter was towards my feet and to the left and closest to the cabin doors, which were just 2-3 feet maybe, most, from her. And we were laughing, cutting up, sharing jokes. At that point it wasn't even at JD's expense or anything. It was just usual us having a good time together, especially while Voldemort was not present. And we're pretty loud when together. We're talkers. It's just, they're mine. So we were kind of like, pretty happy. Always kind of worried when left to our own little devices. Just chatting like we normally do, joking, goofing off, having a great time together. And I remember there being jokes, laughter, definitely talking over one another, right? And the kids are being pretty loud. That day there hadn't been a lot of noise other than the woodcutters, with the 2 crews and such. They cut out a little while before the next things happened. There were several points in the day where I heard noises outside, in the roadway below us, other places up and down, even with the woodcutters, and it had brought me out of the cabin to check the banks and to look down and make sure the roadway was clear and no cars were parked there and JD wasn't back doing anything crazy. And then at one point, as we get closer to the minutes that I never really saw anything that day. No cars really sitting, not much of anything. Every time I was brought out of the cabin, and my oldest would have to help me because, the stress from JD being there had hit pretty hard. And like I said, my body was kind of it was difficult then. As you can imagine, I know looking and seeing me talk, it looks like I'm all, that is not really how it is, and even then it was really hard, and it's been months since that, and I'm still not on thyroid meds again, and it's really difficult just to move. I'm sure you're noticing my speech is getting worse as this is, and my mouth looks different and heavier, and as it's getting later and stress is catching up from yesterday, the droop's there. You'll see this. It's the pucker muscles they had to cut through, so it'll look heavier and like my face is dragging. Anyway, so the point is I felt pretty bad after the stress of JD and that whole drama, and my muscles and things were already cramping without my thyroid med stuff at that point, because it had been, I was expecting radiation, and that was the first time. So at least the 6 or 8 weeks I'd been off, I think, at that point. Anyway, and I have other health conditions. Right now, from the last radiation, it's pericarditis and heart problems and things. So, a little difficult. So my oldest had helped me out of the cabin a few times that day to look and see with my PTSD, hypervigilant state, what was happening, and made sure nothing happened to me while I was being nosy. So, there wasn't anything really abnormal that I saw or heard until, there was a point in there during the day, and it was after the tree cutters had stopped sawing, the clearers, whatever you want to call them. So somewhere around, 3, they cut out. And at some point after that, I heard a car door slam. It sounded like a road that kind of faces the right of way that also cuts through this property too. That splits this one in parts and goes back. There's another road that faces it that's named Simpson. Not to be confused with another one across the main road. So I hear what I feel like is a car door coming from there, and that hit me as odd. And I think we go out at that point and look around, didn't see anything. And, we ended up going back in. But somewhere in that point, and I had asked for help at one point, making sure I was right on this, without being led or anything, but, we heard a car door. Just one. Never heard an engine or a car leave, even though it was quiet. We walked the bank for quite a few minutes. And it looked like one of the survey lines was down to me. So I asked him to see if somebody cut it, to see what was going on. It looked like the tires down in the parking space I referred to earlier had been moved to me at the angle I was at. And, my oldest was nice enough to walk that survey line. There was a branch on it, and he removed it, and the survey line come back up, and then he went a little further down and was to the right, and, looked, and the tires hadn't been moved. And while he was doing that, while we were on the bank, there was a car that went up Candace's driveway. Now, the angle I was at and where he was at, I still don't know why I asked. I know that something was wrong with it, is the reason I asked him. Because had there not been, I wouldn't have asked at all. It was something about the color, the rotation and the way it hit the driveway, because I know the sounds and stuff of Candace's cars as they go in and out, and Donnie's, and, who y'all call Granny's. I know the sounds of their vehicles and the way the tires spin, and I can tell you without looking which one it is, going up or down, even when I'm inside the house or the cabin. The new Subaru, anyway, but for some reason in my head, there was a flash of red going up the driveway that was wrong. It wasn't shiny, it didn't have the gloss, it wasn't right. And the way the traction switched over for the Subaru was entirely different than whatever this was that day. The Subaru does, at that point, a 2.5 thing before it transfers over to whatever it picks up and then finally goes up. This didn't do that, and it also never completed the loop for their driveway. To pull in at the top, towards where Granny's camper was. And it was almost like it had stopped at the basement door, which is also not where most of you all keep marking. It is not where half of, or 75% of the internet seems to think it is. So anyway, it is facing this property, and it is not very far up from the roadway. And I can tell you that the full-size Dodge truck that Baltimore had, that's four-wheel drive, that you can pull up in front of the basement and they can't hear you inside the house. There's just something about the way the basement and the hill's shaped and the way it curves. Most of the time they can't even hear you if you're outside there. And the way the sounds on these properties work are they're all different and they all pick up different things. Hold on. So, something about the sound and the flash of red were wrong to me. The flash, as I recall in my head, wasn't glossy like that Subaru should have been. It wasn't new. It didn't have the clear coat. Something was wrong. And it's the reason I asked my oldest, who was that? And I think just, his statement not long ago, and I may let them speak for themselves if they want, maybe, but not visually. Not sure about that yet. We'll discuss it as a family unit before that happens, if it happens. But they did consent not long ago to other PIs and things, interviewed them on tape and things to be used if, and we've all been interviewed a bazillion times since day one, minute one, so either way, by every agency you could ever name on earth. Trust me. And I believe what my oldest, had told, was that, he just seen red and assumed, so he went with, it's the neighbors. And I took that, well, okay, but I didn't think much about it, right, Anyway, there was, we go back inside at some point, and one of the points from looking at and being outside, for all these different moments. And, the reason I know the time is because I was messaging back and forth with Voldemort, and around 4:52, I believe. I have to look back at the messages, and lately I've not looked at those messages just because of other things going on with, like I said, our situation, and it's just. But I believe the time Voldemort had messaged to ask what I was doing or something, and it was at like 4:52. So somewhere around 4:42, I think has been my estimation since the get, and it could have been as early as 4:30, but it was somewhere between 4:30 and 4:42 for sure, because I know we were out on the bank for a little bit trying to figure out what this was. So, somewhere between 4:30 and 4:42, the children and I were sitting there being pretty loud, laughing, carrying on. I mean, and when I say loud, we're pretty loud. However, the cabin was quiet, TV running, no air, no fans, and this scream happens. This noise I originally tried to dismiss but it was so different and so wrong that it immediately hits me in the gut as not right. And it shuts all three of us down cold mid-sentence. It was that strange. And I mean, as someone who's grown up in the woods and with critters of all kinds, like, if you want to meet an Ellie Mae, I'm it. This wasn't, but I tried. It was so strange that I immediately tried to dismiss it as something else, including a dog, even though I knew better, because, and what I thought was, okay, well, we heard the truck, or car door, right? The one. And even though by this point the woodcutters have been gone for hours, should not have been there, in my head, trying to dismiss this, I was like, okay, so one of Candace's dogs has gotten too close to where a woodcutter was, and they've kicked it. But I knew the sound was wrong for a dog. And I knew it didn't make sense because there'd be no reason there'd be a straggler in there that long. For the woodcutters, right? Whatever you want to call them. But I was like, well, and my kids are immediately like, well, that's the kids. And I'm like, it's not the kids. Because first thing in my mind, when kids is mentioned in that context, is the boys, right? Candace's. Now, I know all of their sounds, trust me. Oh boy, do I. And, I'll not use their names, because, but, I've known them since they were littles, and, I've heard every noise you can imagine out of those three. I hear them play every day. Oh, and I'm like, Candace, I'm sorry, but they kind of, their radiation when I was barking, they drove me a little crazy. That's all I'm saying. No, but anyway, I've heard every noise you can imagine out of those three. And they go down further than Summer, and they do ride their dirt bikes back and forth and things like that. And they go in places that Summer really doesn't. But this wasn't their noises. But that's what hit me, right? That's not the boys, and that's what I said. And it never really occurred to me, Summer. And the reason is because Summer doesn't play down far enough to really hear you. Hear sometimes when she's high on the bank, or, one of the boys are picking, or she's picking, or she's mad, but not a whole lot do you hear Summer. Not like the boys. Oh dear. I mean, you'll hear her faintly, you'll hear whatever, but she stays a little closer to the house and things. And contrary to popular belief, I've never once seen Summer in the road. Those kids, no. She's also not the type to just, it's not, even when people, look, no. So, anyway, but my daughter jumps up and goes to the door of the cabin because she's closest. And what she hears, sorry, I'm making sure her headphones are on, like I said. I'm going through enough as is. And this has been, so, anyway, not, Anyway. Whew. So, she gets to the cabin door first. And this was a pretty quick series of events. It was what is that? That's the kids. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. And she gets to the door first, and she goes, I can still hear it. It's one of the kids. And she was like, it's going, it's muffled. Those were her exact words. That day, she was like, I can still hear it. I couldn't hear it at that point any longer. But like I said, she was the first one to the door, had her head out. and she says that she can hear it. It's still muffled. It was leaving the road, kind of, but that she could still hear it. So, for a little while, it's just so weird, right? So, and I believe she also said she could hear a car too. I could not, but I was further back. Like I said, she was first door, he was second. But then, we go out, onto the banks again, and we're listening, we're looking. We don't hear or see anything, really. We eventually go back in, then, I get ready. I start getting ready not too long after that, because normal time for Voldemort to get off of work. But then Voldemort texts and says he's going to be running behind, that he's working over, and so somewhere, and I believe around 6, but usually gets out, either way. He was running quite a bit behind, but at one point near 6, and I believe on the phone at 6:09, I'm going around the top curve of our doorway to start the descent down. By this point, I'm hearing, hold on. So, like I was saying, I'd gotten down, looked into the tunnel, didn't see Summer, but I went across back over to the left, which is Candace's property, where the other side of the tile is, and that's if you're going out the road, not in. So, cross over, and I start into a spot that's kind of clear, and head towards the creek, because I think, well, maybe brothers have left her behind, or she's fallen off the top of the hill, she's gotten hurt, or, the usual things, right? And we need to find her, if that's the case, because in my head, I'm like, it's been a while since I've heard this scream, this noise. If she's hurt, she's been here a while. So, I'm wearing sandals, and I know the best thing I can do is get into the water. So I step into the creek. Because from there I can keep tracks down. Because when you live in areas like ours, worst case scenario. You also know what happens if somebody can't be found. And you know that staying in the water keeps scent down for dogs, if they have to be brought in. So, also, it's a good way to check, even though, but with your feet on what's in the bottom and deepest spots. So, and at the same time, I keep an eye on the bank going around Candace's, and to the top of the hill. Before I had stepped into the creek, I could hear the boys go down the left side of their property towards the creek on that side that I had looked down towards earlier. And there was a point there when, I could tell that Candace and the boys Candace and the boys had met up when they were hollering for Summer and circling the hill at the top. And Candace was like, to the oldest, was like, what did you do? What did you do? And not like an accused her. It was more of, and at the same time, I keep an eye on the bank going around Candace's, and to the top of the hill. Before I had stepped into the creek, I could hear the boys go down the left side of their property towards the creek on that side that I had looked down towards earlier. And there was a point there when, I could tell that Candace and the boys had met up when they were hollering for Summer and circling the hill at the top. And Candace was like, to the oldest, was like, what did you do? What did you do? And not like an accused her. It was more of a, like, did you not have eyes on your sister? Did you leave her behind? So, literally at this point, I thought, okay, then I was, like, it is that the boys were supposed to have an eye on her and didn't or something. And, so anyway, I'm stepping into the creek. I was, I don't know, not too far in. Sorry, this one's trying to snatch the phone cord. And, why are there 6 in the house? They're always trying to snatch the phone cord. Hold on. I had to remind him that there's 6 others in here. So anyway, Lord, like I said, herd of elephants. So anyway, as I was looking, went a few feet, in to the water, but, 20 feet maybe from the road, I don't know, maybe less than that, I don't know. Wasn't too far in when I hear a car coming down Candace's driveway. And, her talking to somebody, which I assume was somebody in the car with her, but as I hear her getting closer, I come back out of the creek and jump up out of, and then into the roadway, and she's in Grandis's vehicle, and which, kind of confused me at first, because I was like, well, it flashed red earlier, and I thought, well, that wouldn't have been the first vehicle in line, Grandis's was ahead of it, so that's why she's in Grandis's. And so, anyway, when she pulls up, she's on the phone with Donnie. But the first thing I said, guys, I wish I could explain to you. I wish there had been some way for me to take a picture or video that day. Donnie's on the phone with her, and I didn't even realize the time. It just didn't hit me. But the first thing I said to Candace is, I heard her scream, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And then I realized Donnie's on the phone. And Donnie says something like, so you're telling me somebody's taking my baby girl or something? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I didn't put it together, enough time, like, right? I was like, because the first thing she says to me is, we're talking together, basically, which is, I'm saying I'm sorry, and she's like, Summer's missing. And I'm like, where's the last place you've seen her, and I heard the scream, all this is happening, it's just a jumble, right? And her face is so, the tears that, y'all, as a mother, any mother, if you had seen her face, she was sincere. Now, Candace and I and Donnie, it wasn't like we were all, like, besties or anything like that. I just want to clarify that so nobody's like, you know, we were neighbors. And in the area we live in, you kind of deal with your direct neighbor, right? You don't deal with all of them, you deal with your direct. And so, there would be conversations here and there. Candace and I kind of had similar issues throughout the years, because it took, I don't know, good 3 or 4 years or so of us being trapped where we were before we even really met them. We knew they were over there and lived there, but that's how kind of little contact everybody wants with one another where we live. Unless it's an emergency, a murder, or something like don't come on my heel type of situation, right? And, anyway, so, weren't besties or anything like that. Like a cup of sugar, just when the kids need something. Hey, I forgot toilet paper today. We watched the kids for this, or whatever that. Throughout the years, I watched them a few times, you know. I mean, even our kids, we really didn't play together or anything through the years, but, we knew each other's kids. The boys went back and forth, the girls did not. If we had messages to send, or internet wasn't working, or power was out, it's the boys that would come back and forth. Hate to be double standard like that, but, you know, up until right before all of this, my preteen hadn't even been allowed to walk to the mailbox because it's that far away from the house, you know. We just, yeah. It's like the mailbox is the only point of vulnerability, really. And I just wasn't willing to do that. But it was mostly because of cars, not because I ever thought kidnapper or whatever. And, you know, there are bears and this and the other, but my kids kind of know how to act, and, I mean, our feet from them most days. And so, it's not really a big deal for us. Wildlife's a thing. They know how to, you know, traverse that world. Because, like I said, Ellie Mae, right? So they've been taught. It's never really been animals for me that I've worried about with them. Or even people. It's been that somebody coming around the curve because of the way the road's shaped right there, and then they'll be tops right at our old mailbox. It's super dangerous. So, anyway, but Candace and I had similar issues throughout the years and helped each other through those situations. You know, if one of us, she needed a ride away, or I needed her to take pictures for me, or you know, so there was things like that. And we kind of kept that to ourselves through the years, for obviously good reason. But if one of the kids needed something, or, you know, was like cut or whatever, I mean, there was many times that she'd call and be like, hey, do you have, you know, and so, you know, either way, hold on. I mean, we talk at mailboxes, Voldemort would go and chit-chat, do whatever. I mean, he was up there far more than I was. I'm, you know, mostly trapped in the box on my side there. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, that it wasn't like we're besties, or we hang out, or, you know, like, that way people understood the relationship here. as the community neighbors, mothers, I know her well enough to know that her face was genuine that day, and I know with what was already going on in their lives, that her calling the police that day was a big step and not something she would have done lightly. And for her to have done so immediately told me that it was serious, and sort of that she was, like, I still firmly believe she had nothing to do with any of this. And I mean, I've had people almost make me that, like, but I know in my gut, in my heart, that she didn't. If you all could have seen her face and heard her voice, and I understand, I see what the rest of the public does. The same information's out here for me to read and see too. I know certain behaviors make it look really weird and really whatever, and I understand, I get it. I do, and I understand where some people are coming from, and, eating alive for some of it, I get it. And I get the past stuff, and I get whatever. But in my gut, and in my heart, I know she didn't. And I just, either way. So, I tell her I'm looking, and I jump back in to the woods and then back into the creek, and then our other neighbor, who I'm not going to name, had either heard the commotion and was already out, but I heard him and her talking. I don't know if she got him or if he was already out, and a lot of times he is already around that time. So, I don't know how it happened. I was looking on my own, so I was focused. But I did pick up enough to know that he had joined by this point. And then I looked back at one point, and he's pretty close to me. He's still in the roadway, and he was like, "You going to the creek?" And I was like, "Well, you got boots on. I've got sandals. That makes more sense." So he took the bank beside of me so he could walk it and look for tracks. I could stay in the water and I could look. And that way it kept out and on tracks, but covered everything. And so we both walked through, and like I said, the point in the foliage was a little different than even just a couple days after. I mean, it was quick how fast it popped up. And then right where this is at, coincidentally, is where the clear cutting started. And it was ground down to mud and dirt like I've never seen before. Even the creek was dammed up in spots. It was crazy. So, I follow the creek, he follows the bank, which is the bottom of Candace's Hill, is it the main piece there. We keep in contact when we can't see one another. We're like, "Have you seen any track? Have you seen this? Have you seen that?" I'm dragging the bottom of my feet. I'm looking at the mud, see tracks, anything. There's nothing. And he's getting nothing. And we should have had something been through there, just because of how devastated it was and sort of how muddy it had been made by the clear cutting. It was very thick, mushy. It wasn't normal like it would have been had they not clear cut. But tracks would have been there, and even more pronounced, but it was still so messed up that I don't know. Either way, at the creek area though, it wasn't as, Anyway, I get to points to where you can tell that obviously the creek's not been touched. It's stagnant for a pretty lengthy period, even though there had been a rain just a night or two before. And so I could tell nothing had been there in those spots, but I went through them anyway. Felt with my feet at the bottom, looked for tracks. on the banks, and then I would hop out in places I couldn't get through because they would have been messed up so bad by the clear cutting and stuff, and I would hop right back in on the other side of whatever was, and rinse, repeat, right, all the way down through. And the entire time the other neighbor is still with me, and we're following, and calling back and forth, make sure that, we've not found her, that we've not seen anything with each other. I get to the part where they literally have clear cut it in almost a path straight. It's clear cut all the way to the main road. You can't, it was wild. But there's a part that comes down almost like a roadway into Candace's property from the main road that they had clear cut everything off of. And it had entirely dammed up a piece. It's near a guardrail. And the field opens up at that point. And I see the boys way off to what is now my left but back shoulder. And at this point, I hear the cops coming. Because down there, you can tell the cops are coming 30 minutes before they're even in there because of the way dogs howl. So you've got quite a bit of warning. But also, I just hear them, and you hear the engines pick up. There's two, they come by. And then it wasn't long after that Voldemort comes in, and then Donnie not long behind him. During all this, also see and hear Candace going in and out, the Ben Hill onto the main road for things, but not in long spurts, So then, I keep walking my piece, and as much as I can at this point, because, they had literally taken out the creek. It's one of the wildest things I'd ever seen. So, Voldemort stops by one point. I was like, Summer's missing. He's like, I know, I'm looking. So, he's driving him down the main road. I'm like, I've got this. I see the boys back there. They're kind of squatted down. They're children. And I know instinctively what they're doing. They're kind of playing. And I'm just like, okay, kids will be kids. Either way, I finally make my way to them. I'm almost to them before they realize I'm there. They've been caught. And they stand up, and the oldest, I was like, look, when's the last time you seen your sister? Where did you see her last? And he, and I'm not going to say what he told me. But then he tells me it's been like, a few minutes. And I'm not going to give the exact time period either. And he tells me that, and he's pretty speaking for the group, and they're a little off, but I figure they just got caught playing instead of looking for sister, and they're afraid I won't tell mama. So anyway, they start trudging back through the middle of me and another neighbor through the field to go back home. By this point, I can see a cop in the back. I've reached as far as I can get without crossing the other fence, and then right back to where I know has already been searched and is being searched by others at the time. And so I head back out towards the middle, almost the same way the boys do. That way I could look for tracks in the middle in case, and I knew the other neighbor hadn't been able to get that because they were still busy on the bank. I hollered back and forth to them, asked if they found anything. They have not. Obviously, none of us had. We all kind of knew at that point she was not in there. There was also, I think we would have spotted any signs of animal things. I think there was one bear track maybe, but it was older. Wasn't fresh. And I mean one paw, and not fresh. So, but not, anyway, it had been there before the rain, so it wasn't. Anyway, I made my way back to the start of Ben Hill. By this point, other neighbors are starting to flood in. Sorry. I had to take a small break. Anyway, the glare is real. So, I mean, like I said, I know, that, summer's thought of and missed and cared for. And I know the community wants her home, and Candace definitely does, And I don't think Candace had anything to do with this. I don't think the boys had anything to do with this. And me personally, I think she was taken. By who? I don't know. I don't think it was animal related or anything, or I'm quite positive we would have all found tracks and obvious signs. But like I said at the beginning of this, had you 2 seconds before that day, before the calls for summer started coming off the hill, ever asked me if our children could be taken from us on Candace's property or the one we were on until just a short few days ago, I would have laughed. Because on our particular properties, and I think I missed this point earlier and got a little distracted, the one connected to Candace, fully connected, had never even seen summer. And there's nothing but, like a little bit between them, but they had never laid eyes on Summer. Didn't know what she looked like. And they're good people. I mean, it's not anything like that. It's just that that's how it works around there. And how different the views and the sounds and things are, and that's something else I need to touch on. So what I'm going to tell you next, about the sounds and why it is that other neighbors that were outside around the same time I was, or that the scream happened, didn't seem to hear it, but we heard it, is because of the way these properties are shaped and the road is shaped and the hollow itself is, and how drastically different it is from each property to each property. But for weeks, as these searches went on, or at night when it got quieter, or when the drones and the helicopters finally stopped, I sat there as the foliage changed and keeping watch over my own daughter and my kid, and that I was doing so was absolutely used to further abuse myself and these children, and to commit the last weeks of abuse against us. This summer situation was absolutely used to manipulate, hide things from us, and to abuse us, which is pretty wild in normal people's lives. But kept a watch over these two, especially because, I mean, she's the last little girl in there, plus the time the boys were still in there. There's other things close that I'm not going to name, because even though some of these groups don't have a problem, like with property maps coming out and this coming out, and maybe don't realize sometimes that it could be leading predators right back in, or especially with, it being common knowledge that the very thing that makes this community, is also maybe its vulnerabilities, like cell phone service, cop tie, So, posting or sharing some of the property stuff, or, I know there's been a lot of people since the beginning going real life. We've had more than a few, and just, not long before we were out of there. I mean, we had people that were probably mistaken, I don't know, but they were in there screaming at other neighbors going through cancer treatment, just like I was, pulled in for no reason, and were screaming at them, and then come by and are calling my daughter a freak, and I mean, you just don't understand, and Bigfoot hunters and psychics fighting in the middle of the road, and the wildness. So, had a perpetrator come back in, we don't know, and it would have been hard to tell with all the real life people coming in there. It just added more confusion once the road was opened back up. And chaos for all of us, and definitely kept myself on point. No sleep, cancer. I mean, it was some of the most difficult weeks of my life, and it weighs heavy. This was, and there's past tense, and I'm sorry. This is a child we know personally. One, I've changed her diapers and fed her. Just seeing her in person just a day or two before. And as you can imagine, my children did not take it well, especially my daughter, and she's sensitive. Anyway, and knowing that our abuser used that knowledge against her, is one of the last things he tormented her with personally, was about Summer, and how she felt about it, and did things to make sure. But we went through weeks of my youngest being scared, and having all kinds of it, and she still is very sensitive to it, obviously. And it took a toll on her, and then what was done recently has again. Anyway, with the property sounds, sorry. The neighbors connected, and here's the thing, I asked for somebody to help me run testing or something, because all these nights that I walked this bank and these hills and the woods and made sure of sounds and how I was hearing things, especially as the foliage changed, because it does change and pick up differently during different seasons. I was trying to make sure as all the foliage, that it hadn't changed it too much. So, anyway, the pieces kind of came together. I mean, I knew why, but I was just trying to have confirmation of that. And I'd asked for people to help me figure out how to test that. And until recently, so somebody did, and we kind of made sure that would happen before our final days at the property recently. And it's on videotape, it's been recorded, that I'm not wrong. I wasn't wrong from the beginning. But the reasons why this sound was picked up by us, and we heard the scream, but Candace couldn't, the other neighbors couldn't, but we could hear it clear as day. Hold on. And, let me explain here that I and the other neighbor that had already been looking are basically the only two neighbors that know what summer looked like. The other neighbor that joins Candace and them, even though they're connected, whereas her and I really aren't, nor is the other one, but he has visual too, and because the kids play on that, so it's more clear than. And because, Candace and I talk to them, and they are out in a place where, they all look, everybody looks like, so that's why, and they're some of the best neighbors you could ever want, guys. I don't care what the media tells you, everybody in there ain't crazy, most people are good, seriously, there's retired veterans, there's ex-police, hospital workers, and there's only 11 or 12 of us in there, right? And, there's not what it's being made out to be. Everybody's pretty quiet. We were the youngest, but had the least traffic of anybody, and I mean this sincerely, not even my family came there, which part of that was what, we were going through separately there. But also, I just don't like visitors either. Kind of a homebody, but, it was definitely part of the abuse I've been through there, and that they've been through there for a decade. So, we had the least visitors of anybody, even though we were the youngest. But any neighbor in there, if you asked them something, was gonna have your back. Midnight, noon, didn't matter. These are good people. So anyway, and hardworking people. And postal workers in there. You name it, it's not what you think it is. Out of just 12, school worker. It's not what you think it is. So anyway. So I'm on my way, like I said, back to the start of Ben Hill, at where it meets the main road, and I think the third car's coming in, the police car. It was an SUV, whatever it was, and I stopped him. It was I heard a scream, whatever, and they said, okay, they take kind of note. Everything's going so quick, moving so fast at that point. But other neighbors are coming in, and they ask us and other ones, what she looks like. We describe her. We tell them where we've already searched. Most of those neighbors knew about, tracks as well, so try to keep that down. So then things start just obviously going from there. And I think it best that I don't speak really on the things after that period, or just because of just I think the main events right there in those first few moments and hours are what matter the most. There's nothing really afterwards that, because most of that pertains to, search crews and, obviously the main parts of every, and what follows after a situation like this. I can tell you that some of us had a hard time, because we had already, spread the word. The word was out, and everything was kind of searched before even, we all knew the properties well enough to know where. And to look at all of ours quickly enough to know that, and we all get it, we understand, but, yeah, I mean, there were things, the tree cutters came back in and stuff starting the next morning, and for almost the entire time period, even search crews and stuff were in there. Mail was cut out though, and trash was cut out, for 10, 12 days, something like that. The tree crew started back the next morning though. And we all kind of worried if they were accidentally destroying evidence or moving scents or things like that. And we didn't really understand. I don't think we still do as a community. There were things with that made us uncomfortable, including at one point, I went down but for the third time. Now, mind you, we all had to show ID to get in and out of there. For weeks, you weren't coming and going unless you had. And for the most part, you weren't coming or going anyway because you were on property. It was search crews and teams and dogs came through to search the houses and the buildings and the properties. And, it was literally one crew after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. And I mean that sincerely, day in and day out. For weeks and weeks, plus the helicopter overhead and the drones, and it was, but these tree crews were in there. I think the number of them had gone down quite a bit, but they had finally started on this piece of property and in the right-of-way at a point, and we noticed weird stuff. So I was sitting down once again to remind them that wood needed to be left laying, and there were some weird questions like, how old's your daughter? And them cutting in on a spot that had already been cut that didn't make sense to me. And then right behind the question about my daughter's age, I felt uncomfortable. Could have just been sensitive to the subject. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Right behind it was another guy that joked about how they could take off with and be gone. Not summer in particular, but how that job would be perfect for something like that. I was like, maybe the guy just has no filter. I don't know. That's real inappropriate. But it wasn't, I think that same day they asked them to leave from in there. And there was some issues with that, but they stopped letting them in. So anyway, but I'm not sure that and I'm just saying that seems to be how that transpired. Because I complained. Not even sorry. So, anyway, other than that, I'm not really going to say much otherwise. I have watched, I know that part of the thing is, like Candace not crying, not doing whatever, And I don't think it would look. Y'all, I've seen her in person. I talked to her, just talked to her last night or this morning. Can't remember which. It was one or the other, though. But, I mean, she was crying then. She really does sincerely want Summer found. And I don't think it would matter whether she was crying or not. I think everybody would eat her alive. I understand how the optics look. I understand how... I get it. I get it just like you all do, you know? And I understand part of the issue. Like, at first was the past tense language, before it was even heard out from y'all. I mean, like, the first night I heard it, and it didn't bother me because, I think that what people who live in maybe the suburbs or easier lives, you know, they're kind of projecting, but when you live the lives of people like this, or have gone through some of the things or had the past that Candace and things have had, or, you know, or like us, I mean, you learn how to, and sometimes maybe you seem a little, you know, it's more reality based than, and so I think somewhere you already think the worst, or you think, or it's hard to have hope when you've lived a hard life. Or maybe as parents, even though it's hard for some of us to admit openly and in public, it's, as a parent, which do you hope for? Right? I mean, you don't want either, obviously. You don't want either. Your best case, like you hope all those days, right? You hope that just got mad, wandered off, or broke a leg, or stuck, or something, right? That's your best case. But then, if they're taken, I mean, let's be real, these people don't take these children to Disney World, guys. And they're either kept and tormented, or they're tormented and it's over. And as people who've lived harder lives, I don't fault them for using past tense, and I know they still have hope. I know Candace does. I know we all do. And I know she cries for that baby. And I know she wants her home. Just like I know she misses her sons. So, anyway, yeah. I will be back. And I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't bother my other neighbors. So, all I'm going to say is that one neighbor, despite being closer in a way, can only hear what's coming off the left side of Candace's top of her hill on one side of it. The day I went and visited the boys were still there. Some of the last days they were there. And they were, like screaming, like playing, full out playing, very loud. I mean, like, very loudly. I could hear them clear as a bell at the house and cabin, and I could hear them all the way down the road, and then you get to that property, because I was visiting for another reason with this particular neighbor. And they made it a point to say some stuff like, well, we've not heard the boys in weeks, are they still over? And I'm like, 2 seconds ago, like, they were screaming as we pulled in. Y'all didn't hear? Nope. couldn't hear them. But while on this particular property, like banging or something was happening on the left side, and you hear clear as a bell on these people. So they're only able to hear what's on the left side and top in one area coming down. They can't hear what I hear on ours. Candace can't hear the screams, and she couldn't hear me screaming from the bottom area where, if somewhere had been snatched, taken, muffled, let go, like at the bottom driveway areas, she couldn't have heard that. There's a way that their bank does and the hollow carries that she couldn't hear me. She's not going to hear that scream. And then there were several incidents that were in between these that helped me figure out, and I don't really want to say much about them, just because they would be identifying enough, and part of that's public record to show which properties are what, and which people heard what, and things. But there were things that happened, including like a police report I had to make, and then I heard gunshots in one area, but other people can hear it, and we had a trespasser one night, but nobody, and other things happening, and so that right there told me, because certain people couldn't hear certain things, to not to part that. So we tested the theory, right? And had children scream just a few days ago in the same spot. As we were in the cabin in the same spots, with the bed still there before I packed it up and moved it, and all of the things still in the same place, and almost the same amount of foliage, and as summer's winding down, summer started off, so it's more like it was. So either way, kind of proved that there's a reason why we could hear it, but why Candace could not, and why other neighbors could not, but thought they should have, and, but we've all realized now why that is. Which, we knew that on this particular piece of property, it kind of picks up everybody's in the entire road anyway, just at different ways. Plus, this particular piece here that we were on until just a few days ago, also picks up, literally, like, there's this one cow that drives me insane. It was like it was in the cabin doorway. But it's all the way out on the main road near the end of Simpson Loop, on the very tail end of it. But it sounds like it's right. So I can also hear noise just like that from the main road. It depends on what, but that particular piece that we were on until just a few days ago kind of just, if you wanted to be the neighbor from Bewitched, that's the property for you. That's all I'm saying. But, regardless, there was a very real reason, several of them, why it is that we heard and nobody else did, and maybe why people doubt, or maybe why I wasn't taking it seriously, because everybody's like, but why? Well, other neighbors didn't. That's all I can say is, what we heard was not an animal, it was not a kicked dog. My kids immediately picked it up as the kids, but to me, I wasn't thinking summer. And it's one of the only regrets I think I've ever had in my life, and it has been throughout this. I mean, it's like, what if this, and what if that, and I'm not a what if person, but I'll tell you with this, I have been what if, and I wish I'd done a lot of things differently that day. And I still don't know how I missed something so, especially in that state of hypervigilance and Pete, I just don't understand. So, But otherwise, I'm going to, kind of leave everything after, after the cops get there and all, everything else off the table, because, I think it's those first few minutes and hours that are crucial, maybe the day before, the weeks before. But, I still, in my soul and gut, believe that Candace had nothing to do with this. The boys had nothing to do with this. I think somebody took Summer. Who? Why? I don't know. I wish I did. But where it concerns answers, I'm no closer than anybody else on the face of the earth right now, and we can all only hope that somebody eventually has an aha moment, or figures it out and finds her and brings her home. I know that all of us hope that everybody keeps sharing her information and picture and doesn't forget her, and looks at every little that you see to make sure it's not her. Because, how many cases of that have been? A couple years went by and there they are. So, definitely keep your eyes and ears open. And like I said, I know how appearances seem. I understand past is there, but I get it. But I know Candace wants Summer home. And she may not cry in front of you all, but she does cry. And her heart is broke. And I'll tell you that my mom even met her for the first time as we were trying to get us out of the situation we were in, and for that thought she was guilty. And after meeting her, realized that she had been dead wrong. So, what you see is not always what you get or what you expect, and like I said, we're not besties or anything. We've never really been like, hey, come, but her and I have somewhat lived because it's out there, it's not like I'm saying, anything that people don't know, but, one of us, there was a runoff, or one of ours had left us without anything, or trapped us on purpose, or whatever, right? And honestly, hers was less prone than Voldemort to that, and I'll tell you, the, violence against us was far worse. There was death for all the big deal that the internet makes of what's happening. Y'all have no idea. You have no idea. On the whole, only a few incidents, like over the hours was like an everyday, and a different style of abuse, but either way, I can only name a couple times with my hand over that way, and those are all public record with you, like y'all have got hold of those, so, but ours was not, and ours wasn't really reported, and like I said earlier, we're somewhere else now, still trying to figure things out, still trying to be free, still trying to stay safe, but, anyway, just keep sharing Summer's information and stuff. And like I asked for, please do not share pictures of my children or private info about them. I would greatly appreciate it. I know they would. They've got some sense of normalcy back after our own situation, and I'd hate for it to be taken from them, or any more taken from them than already has been. So, please just, if y'all see something, say something with Summer, okay?